On the night Adrian Cole died, he didn't scream. Not at first, because shock is quiet. It slows everything down. It stretches seconds into something unrecognizable. And for a brief moment, he didn't understand what was happening. The smell reached him before the flames did. Gasoline. Sharp. Heavy. Wrong. Adrian sat in the driver's seat, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel as confusion settled into something colder. Something clearer. This wasn't an accident. He turned his head slowly, and that's when he saw her. Lena, standing just a few steps away from the car. Still. Silent. Watching. For a second. Just one. He expected her to run toward him. To panic. To shout. To do something. Because she was his wife. But she didn't move. And then, someone stepped beside her. Marcus. Adrian's breath caught. Not because he didn't recognize him, but because he did. Too well. The realization didn't hit all at once. It unfolded, piece by piece, like something breaking inside him slowly. The late nights. The unanswered calls. The quiet distance that never had a clear explanation. It wasn't confusion. It was betrayal. You said this would be quick, Marcus muttered, glancing at the car. Lena didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were on Adrian, and for the first time since he had known her, they felt empty. Not angry, not emotional. Decided. Lena. Adrian's voice came out weaker than he expected. He wasn't asking for answers. He was asking for something else. Something simpler. A reason. But she didn't give him one. You shouldn't have gotten in the way, she said quietly. The words didn't sound cruel. They sounded final. Like a decision that had already been made. Adrian tried the door. Locked. Of course it was. Because this wasn't chaos. It was planned. The flames ignited suddenly. Violent. Unforgiving. Heat rushed into the car, swallowing the air. Adrian's pulse slammed against his chest as instinct took over. He hit the window. Once. Twice. Again. Nothing. The fire spread faster than logic. Faster than escape. And through it all, he kept looking at her. Waiting. For something. Anything. Regret. Hesitation. Doubt. But none of it came. Lena stepped back. Not rushing forward. Not reaching out. Just stepping away. As if creating distance from something that no longer concerned her. Adrian felt it then. Not the heat. Not the fear. But the truth. He had never been part of her future. Only an obstacle in it. The flames climbed higher. Breathing became impossible. His vision blurred. And still, he looked at her. Because even now, a part of him refused to believe it. The last thing he saw was Lena turning around. Not watching him. Leaving. Completely. Darkness followed. Not immediate, but inevitable. Sound disappeared first. Then sensation. Then thought. Until there was nothing left. And then, everything came back. Adrian's eyes snapped open. Air rushed into his lungs violently, like he had been underwater for too long. He sat up suddenly, his body tense, his heart racing. No fire. No smoke. No pain. Just silence. Familiar silence. He looked around. His room. Unchanged. Exactly as he remembered it. But that wasn't possible. Because he had died. He knew he had. He could still feel it. The heat. The suffocation. The moment everything ended. His hands trembled slightly as he looked down at them. No burns. No damage. Nothing. Adrian stood up slowly, his mind struggling to catch up with reality. This wasn't survival. This was something else. Something impossible. His eyes moved toward the wall. And then he froze. A calendar. Simple. Ordinary. But the date was wrong. Not wrong. Earlier. 3 months earlier. Before the fire. Before the betrayal. Before everything ended. Adrian's breathing slowed. Not from calm, but from understanding. Because this wasn't confusion anymore. It was clarity. He had been given another chance. Not to fix things. Not to save the past. But to change the outcome. His expression hardened slightly. Because now, he knew everything. How it would happen. Who was involved. What would cost. And this time, he wouldn't be the one trapped. He wouldn't be the one burning. And most importantly, he wouldn't be the one who stayed. Because now, he knew exactly who Lena was. And this time, he would walk away first. Adrian didn't move immediately. Not after realizing the date. Not after understanding what had happened. Because knowing the future isn't the same as knowing what to do with it. He stood there, staring at the calendar, his mind replaying everything. The fire. The betrayal. The moment Lena turned away. This time, he didn't feel shock. He felt clarity. And clarity changes everything. Adrian exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. 3 months. That's how much time he had. 3 months before the night he died. 3 months to change everything. His first instinct wasn't revenge. It was distance. Because looking back, the biggest mistake he made was staying. Staying when things didn't make sense. Staying when something felt wrong. Staying when he should have walked away. This time, he wouldn't. His phone buzzed suddenly. The sound cut through the silence. Adrian looked down. A message. Lena, are you free tonight? He stared at the words longer than necessary. Because 3 months ago, he would have answered immediately. Without thinking. Without hesitation. Now, he didn't feel the same urgency. He didn't feel anything at all. That was new. Adrian typed slowly. I'm busy. He paused. Then sent it. Simple. Neutral. Distant. For the first time, he didn't choose her. And that was the beginning. Across the city, Lena frowned at her phone. That wasn't like him. Adrian didn't say no. He adjusted. He made time. He showed up. Always. But now, he hadn't. She stared at the message again. I'm busy. No explanation. No follow-up. No apology. Something about it felt off. But she didn't think too deeply about it. Not yet. Because from her perspective, nothing had changed. Everything was still under control. Adrian, on the other hand, was already rewriting everything. The next few days were quiet. Deliberately, he avoided unnecessary conversations. Skipped routines. Changed patterns. Not dramatically, but enough. Because small changes create different outcomes. He stopped visiting places he used to go with her. Stopped answering immediately. Stopped being predictable. And slowly, he began to see something clearly. The relationship hadn't been balanced. Not even close. He had been present, consistent, available, and she hadn't. That realization didn't hurt. Not anymore. It settled, like something that finally made sense. A week later, they met again. Not because he wanted to, but because avoiding her completely, too early, would raise questions. And this time, Adrian needed control. Lena sat across from him, studying his face carefully. You've been distant, she said. Her tone wasn't emotional. It was observant, calculated. Adrian noticed that immediately, because now he was paying attention. I've just been busy, he replied calmly. The same words he had sent before, but spoken differently, without explanation, without softness. Lena leaned back slightly. Something about him felt different, subtle, but undeniable. You didn't used to be this busy, she said. Adrian met her gaze. I didn't used to prioritize myself either. The words hung between them. Not aggressive, but unfamiliar. Because this wasn't the Adrian she knew, the one she expected. And that created discomfort. A brief silence followed. Lena broke it first. Did something happen? Adrian almost smiled. Because something had happened. Everything had happened. But she didn't know that. And she wouldn't. Nothing important, he said. And that was the truth. Because she was no longer important. Not in the way she used to be. That realization shifted something again. Inside him. Something solid. Permanent. Lena watched him carefully. Trying to understand. Trying to regain control of a situation that suddenly felt less predictable. Because control had always been hers. But now, it wasn't. And she could feel it, even if she didn't understand it yet. That night, Adrian walked away first. Not waiting. Not lingering. Not giving her the final word. And for the first time, Lena felt something unfamiliar. Not regret. Not concern. But uncertainty. Because something had changed. And she didn't know why. Or how. Or when. But she would. Soon enough. Because the future she had planned was already beginning to break. And Adrian was the one breaking it. Adrian didn't rush into revenge. That would have been his old mistake. Emotional decisions. Immediate reactions. Acting without understanding the full picture. This time, He chose patience, because knowing how you die isn't enough. You need to know why. The fire wasn't random. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was planned, carefully, which meant there were steps, moments, conversations, things he had missed before. And now, he needed to find them. Adrian sat in his apartment late that night, the lights off, the city glowing faintly through the window. He closed his eyes, not to rest, to remember. The night of the fire. Every detail, every movement, every word. The smell of gasoline. The locked door. Marcus standing beside Lena. Marcus. Adrian's eyes opened slowly. That was the key. Because Marcus hadn't appeared suddenly. He had always been there. Hidden in plain sight. A friend. A colleague. Someone close enough to never be questioned. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his mind connecting pieces. 3 months ago, Marcus was already in his life, which meant the betrayal had already begun. He just hadn't seen it. A memory surfaced. A dinner. Casual. Unimportant. At least, that's what he had thought. Marcus had been there. Relaxed. Confident. Too comfortable. Adrian hadn't noticed it then. But now, he understood. Comfort doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from familiarity. From access. From something deeper. And suddenly, everything aligned. Marcus wasn't just involved. He was central. Adrian stood up slowly, because this changed everything. This wasn't just about Lena. It was about both of them, and whatever they had built. Behind his back. The next day, Adrian made a decision. He didn't confront them, didn't accuse, didn't reveal what he knew. Instead, he observed, because people reveal more when they think you don't see anything. He reached out to Marcus first. Casual. Let's grab a drink. Marcus agreed immediately. Too easily. That alone was telling. That evening, they met at a quiet bar. Marcus looked exactly the same. Relaxed. Confident. Unbothered. Didn't expect this, Marcus said with a small smile. Adrian nodded slightly. Just felt like catching up. It sounded natural. Because it needed to. Marcus leaned back, studying him briefly. You've been distant lately, he said. The same observation Lena had made. Interesting. Adrian noted it. Because it meant something. They were both watching him. Monitoring changes. That wasn't normal. That was awareness. Which meant he had already started drifting away from their plan. And they noticed. Work, Adrian replied simply. Marcus nodded. But his eyes didn't fully accept it. And Adrian saw that. Clear. Unhidden. The conversation continued. Normal topics. Safe discussions. But beneath it, something else moved. Subtle. Careful. Marcus mentioned Lena. Casually. Too casually. You two still good? He asked. Adrian didn't react immediately. Instead, he took a slow sip of his drink. Then answered. Why wouldn't we be? Marcus smiled slightly. But it didn't reach his eyes. No reason. And that was the confirmation. Because questions like that don't come without intention. Adrian leaned back, watching, analyzing, and for the first time, he saw Marcus clearly. Not as a friend, not as someone close, but as a threat. Calculated, patient, involved, and most importantly, dangerous. Because Marcus didn't feel guilty. He didn't hesitate. He didn't slip. Which meant this wasn't new for him. This was planned. Long term. Adrian's expression remained neutral. But internally, everything shifted again. Because now, he wasn't just avoiding death. He was dealing with people who had already decided his fate. And that required more than distance. It required strategy. The night ended without confrontation, without suspicion, without mistakes. Adrian left first. Again. And as he stepped outside, the air felt colder, sharper, clearer. Because now, he knew, not just what would happen, but who would make it happen. And that changed everything. Because surviving once was luck, but surviving again required control. And Adrian was done being the one who didn't see it coming. Adrian didn't act immediately. Because control isn't about speed. It's about timing. Now that he knew who was involved, and how far things had already gone, he understood one thing clearly. If he moved too fast, he would lose. Because Lena and Marcus weren't reacting. They were planning. and people who plan don't make careless mistakes. So Adrian changed his approach. Instead of pulling away, he stepped closer, not emotionally, strategically, because the only way to break something hidden is to get close enough to see it clearly. The next few days, he became someone familiar again. He answered messages, showed up on time, spoke the way he used to. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to make them comfortable. Enough to make them believe. Nothing had changed. And slowly, the tension shifted. Lena stopped watching him as closely. Marcus relaxed. Their guard lowered, just slightly. But for Adrian, that was enough. Because small openings lead to bigger truths. One evening, Adrian suggested dinner. A simple idea. Normal. Expected. But this time, he invited Marcus too. That was new. And Lena noticed immediately. "You want Marcus there?" she asked. Her tone was neutral, but her eyes weren't. Adrian nodded. "Why not? It's been a while." He said it casually, like it meant nothing. But it meant everything. Because this wasn't dinner. It was observation. The three of them sat at the same table. Same space. Same air. But a completely different reality. Adrian watched everything. Not obviously. Carefully. The way Lena avoided certain topics. The way Marcus filled silences too quickly. The way their eyes met. For just a second too long. And there it was. Not obvious. Not dramatic. But real. Connection. Hidden. But undeniable. Adrian leaned back slightly. Because now, he didn't need confirmation anymore. He had it. But confirmation wasn't enough. He needed leverage. Something they didn't expect. Something they couldn't control. That's when he made his next move. Deliberate. Precise. "I'm thinking of leaving the city for a while," he said calmly. The words landed softly. But the reaction was immediate. Lena froze. Just for a second. Marcus's expression shifted. Barely noticeable. But Adrian saw it. Clear. Unfiltered. "Leaving?" Lena asked. Too quickly. Too sharply. Adrian nodded. "Work opportunity." Still deciding. Silence followed. But it wasn't empty. It was active. Thinking. Calculating. Because this wasn't part of their plan. And that's exactly why he said it. Because when you disrupt a plan, people reveal themselves. Lena forced a small smile. "That's sudden." Adrian shrugged slightly. "Things change." The same words. Different meaning. Marcus leaned forward. "When were you thinking?" he asked. There was not concern. Timing. Adrian noticed immediately. "Soon," he replied. Another pause. Longer this time. Because now, they were adjusting. Recalculating. Trying to understand what this meant. And more importantly, how it affected them. Adrian watched it all unfold. Quietly. Because this was the moment. The shift. They weren't in control anymore. Not completely. And they knew it. Even if they didn't understand why. That night ended differently. Less relaxed. Less certain. Because something had changed. Not visibly, but fundamentally. Later, as Lena stood alone, looking at her phone, her thoughts weren't calm. They weren't clear. Because for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Not about the plan, but about Adrian. Because he wasn't reacting the way he used to. He wasn't predictable anymore. And unpredictability is dangerous. Especially when you think you're in control. Across the city, Adrian stood by his window again. Looking out. Thinking. Not about revenge. Not yet. But about timing. Because now, he had done something important. He had disrupted the future. And once the future changes, everything becomes unstable. Including the people who created it. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. Because this was no longer about survival. It was about control. And this time, he wasn't the one being led into the fire. He was the one deciding. Who walked away from it? Adrian knew something important. Once people feel control slipping, they don't slow down. They rush. They make decisions faster. More aggressively. More dangerously. And that's exactly what he was waiting for. Because pressure reveals intention. 2 days after that dinner, Lena changed. Not dramatically, but enough. She started calling more often. Showing up without warning. Asking questions she hadn't asked before. "Are you really leaving? Since when? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Each question sounded casual, but none of them were. Adrian noticed the pattern immediately. This wasn't curiosity. This was concern. Not for him, for the plan. And that told him everything. He answered simply, never too detailed, never too vague, just enough to keep her uncertain. Because uncertainty creates mistakes. Meanwhile, Marcus stopped pretending entirely. The friendly tone faded. The casual attitude tightened. Now, he watched Adrian more directly, measured him, like someone trying to solve a problem. Adrian welcomed it, because attention meant pressure was working, and pressure meant time was accelerating, which led to the next step, the event, a business gathering, important, public, and most importantly, predictable. Adrian remembered it clearly, because in his previous life, this was where everything quietly shifted, where Lena and Marcus confirmed something, where decisions were finalized. And shortly after, the night of the fire followed. This time, Adrian arrived earlier, not to participate, but to observe. The room was filled with noise, conversations, movement, distractions, perfect cover. He didn't approach them immediately. Instead, he watched, and it didn't take long. Lena entered first, elegant, composed, controlled. Marcus followed shortly after, not beside her, but not far enough to be coincidence. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly, because now he could see it clearly. The distance wasn't distance. It was strategy. They weren't hiding randomly. They were hiding deliberately. That's when it happened. A moment. Small. Almost invisible. Lena stepped away from a group. Marcus followed, and they disappeared into a quieter hallway. Adrian didn't hesitate. He moved. Not quickly, not obviously, but with purpose. The hallway was dim, silent, empty, except for them. Their voices were low, careful, but not careful enough. He's acting different, Lena said. Adrian stopped, just out of sight, still, listening. Marcus exhaled. It doesn't matter, he replied. It changes nothing. It changes timing, Lena said. That word. Again, timing. Adrian felt it settle. Because now, everything was aligning. We should move sooner, Marcus added. Adrian's expression didn't change. But internally, everything sharpened. Sooner. That meant one thing. They were accelerating. Because of him. Because he disrupted the plan. Lena hesitated. For the first time, her voice wasn't steady. What if something goes wrong? Marcus didn't hesitate. It won't. Confidence. Dangerous confidence. Because people like that don't expect resistance. They expect control. And that's where they fail. Adrian stepped back silently. Because now, he had what he needed. Not suspicion. Not theory. Proof. Clear. Unavoidable. They weren't just planning something. They were planning his death. Again. But this time, he was ahead of it. Way ahead. Back in the main room, Adrian returned calmly. As if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just heard the moment they decided to kill him sooner. Lena and Marcus followed minutes later. Composed. Unchanged. Or so they thought. Adrian looked at them once. Just once. And for the first time, there was no doubt. No hesitation. No confusion. Only certainty. The future had changed. But not in their favor. In his. Because now, they were rushing. And rushing people make mistakes. Big ones. Adrian picked up his drink slowly. Calm. Controlled. Untouchable. Because the next move wouldn't be theirs. It would be his. And this time, he wouldn't just survive. He would end it. Adrian didn't feel fear anymore. Not after hearing their plan. Not after understanding how close he had come to dying again. Fear belongs to uncertainty. And Adrian had none left. What he had now was control. And control is quiet. He didn't confront them. Didn't change his behavior suddenly. Didn't reveal what he knew. Because the moment they realized he understood everything, they would adapt. And Adrian needed them. Exactly as they were. Confident. Unaware. Careless. That's when he made his decision. He wouldn't just avoid the fire. He would let it happen. But on his terms. The same night. The same setup. The same plan. Only this time, he wouldn't be the one inside the car. The idea wasn't emotional. It was precise. Because reversing a situation is more powerful than escaping it. The next morning, Adrian called Lena. Not a message. A call. That alone caught her off guard. Are you free tonight? He asked calmly. A pause. Then, yes. No hesitation. Because from her perspective, this was normal, predictable, expected, exactly what she needed. I want to talk, Adrian added. Another pause. Longer this time, because something about that felt different, but not enough to refuse. Okay, she said. Adrian ended the call, and for a moment, he stood there in silence. Because this was the point of no return. Not emotionally, strategically. Everything after this would move forward. No adjustments, no second chances, only outcomes. That evening, everything aligned, just like before. Same road, same timing, same quiet stretch of city where no one paid attention. Adrian drove calmly, not rushing, not hesitating, because he already knew what would happen. He parked the car, exactly where he had before. The memory was clear, too clear. He stepped out slowly. This was the moment he had died. But this time, he wasn't inside. He stood a few steps away instead, waiting, because they would come. They had to, and they did. Lena arrived first, her expression unreadable, controlled, familiar. Marcus followed shortly after. Same calm presence, same confidence. But this time, Adrian saw through it, completely. You said you wanted to talk, Lena said. Adrian nodded slightly. I did. His voice was steady, too steady, and that was the first thing that felt wrong. Lena noticed it, but she didn't react. Not yet. Marcus glanced at the car. Subtle, quick, but Adrian saw it. That was the signal, the confirmation. Everything was in place. Everything was ready. Except, this time, something was different. Adrian stepped back, just slightly, enough to change everything. I already know, he said quietly. Silence. Immediate. Sharp. Lena's expression shifted first. Confusion. Then something darker. What are you talking about? She asked. But her voice wasn't steady anymore. Marcus didn't speak, because he already understood. Adrian looked at both of them. Calm. Certain. You should have stayed patient, he continued. And maybe I wouldn't have noticed. That was the moment. The break. Because now, their control was gone. Completely. What did you hear? Marcus asked. Direct. No more pretending. Adrian didn't answer immediately, because he didn't need to. Silence was enough. Lena took a step forward. You're overthinking, she said quickly. Too quickly. Too forced. And Adrian almost smiled. Because now, they were reacting. And reacting people make mistakes. I died here once, Adrian said. The words landed quietly, but they hit harder than anything else. Because they didn't make sense. Not logically. Not rationally. And that created hesitation. A crack. Small, but real. Marcus frowned slightly. What? Adrian stepped closer to the car, looking at it. Not afraid. Not hesitant. I remember everything, he said. And this time, there was no doubt in his voice. No room for denial. Only truth. Lena's expression changed completely. Not confusion anymore. Not control. Something else. Fear. Real fear. Because deep down, she felt it. Something wasn't right. Something had changed. And she wasn't in control anymore. Adrian turned back to them slowly. And for the first time, they saw it. Clearly, he wasn't the same man. Not the one they planned to kill. Not the one they thought they understood. This version was different. Colder. Sharper. Untouchable. Go ahead, Adrian said quietly, gesturing slightly toward the car. Do it. Silence fell again. But this time, it was different. Because now, they hesitated. And hesitation was something they had never shown before. Which meant one thing. They had lost control. And Adrian had taken it. Silence held them in place. Not the kind that passes quickly. The kind that forces truth to surface. Lena was the first to move. Not forward. Not toward Adrian. But slightly back. Instinct. Because something about him was no longer familiar. You're not making sense, she said. But her voice betrayed her. It wasn't steady. It wasn't controlled. It was searching for something to hold on to. But there was nothing left. Adrian didn't respond immediately. He let the silence stretch. Because now, silence worked in his favor. It made them think. And thinking, under pressure, leads to mistakes. Marcus stepped forward. Unlike Lena, he didn't step back, because men like him don't retreat easily. You heard something, Marcus said. Not a question, a conclusion. Adrian met his gaze. I heard enough. That was all he needed to say, because the rest, they would fill in themselves. And they did. Lena's breathing changed. Subtle, but faster, because now, she wasn't trying to maintain control. She was trying to recover it. You're overreacting, she said again. But this time, the words felt empty, even to her. Adrian shook his head slightly. No, he said calmly. I'm finally reacting correctly. That landed harder, because it wasn't emotional. It was precise. Marcus's expression hardened. Then what? He asked. What exactly do you think is happening? Adrian almost smiled, because they were still trying to control the narrative, still trying to shift the ground beneath him. But it didn't work anymore. Do you want me to say it? Adrian asked quietly. He looked at Lena, not Marcus, because this was always about her. You were going to kill me, he said. No hesitation, no softness, just truth. The words hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. Lena froze, completely, because hearing it out loud made it real. Marcus didn't deny it. That was the first mistake. Instead, he exhaled slowly, as if the situation had already crossed a line. Because it had. There's no point pretending anymore, Marcus said. Lena turned to him sharply. Marcus! But it was too late. Because once truth starts, it doesn't stop. You weren't supposed to find out like this, Marcus continued. Adrian didn't react. But internally, everything settled. Because now, there was no doubt left. No uncertainty. No possibility of misunderstanding. Only reality. Lena looked at Adrian again. And for the first time, her expression changed completely. Not controlled. Not distant. But human. You don't understand, she said quickly. Adrian's eyes didn't soften. Then explain. Simple. Direct. Final. Lena hesitated. Because there are moments where the truth feels impossible to say. Not because it's complicated, but because it reveals too much. He was in the way, Marcus said before she could speak. Lena closed her eyes briefly. Because that wasn't what she wanted to say. But it was the truth. And truth doesn't wait for permission. Adrian nodded slowly. In the way of what? Marcus didn't hesitate. Everything. That word echoed. Because it wasn't specific. It was complete. Which meant Adrian had never been part of their future. Not even slightly. Just an obstacle. A problem to remove. Adrian looked at Lena again. Waiting. Not for denial. But for something else. Anything. But she didn't deny it. Because she couldn't. We didn't have a choice, she said quietly. And that was the final break. Because choice had always existed. She just didn't choose him. Adrian let out a slow breath. Not from anger. Not from pain. But from clarity. Because this was it. The truth. Unfiltered. Unavoidable. And now, he understood something completely. There was nothing left to save. Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to feel. Only something left to end. You already made your choice, Adrian said. His voice was calm. Too calm. And that unsettled them more than anger ever could. Marcus glanced at Lena. Because now, they weren't aligned anymore. Not completely. Because the situation had changed. And when situations change, people reveal different sides. Lena stepped forward suddenly. Wait, she said. Not commanding. Not controlled. Almost desperate. Adrian didn't move. Because now, he didn't need to. This wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said. Her voice breaking slightly. Adrian tilted his head. How was it supposed to happen? The question cut deeper than anything else. Because it forced her to imagine it. To say it. To face it. And she couldn't. Not fully. Which said everything. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't controlled. It was collapsing. Because everything they built, everything they planned, was falling apart, right in front of them. And Adrian was the one watching it happen. Calm. Still. Untouchable. Because this time, he wasn't the one losing everything. They were. The silence didn't break immediately. Because some moments aren't meant to be rushed. They're meant to settle. To sink in. To force everyone involved. To face what can no longer be undone. Lena stood there, her breathing uneven, her thoughts no longer clear. For the first time, she wasn't calculating. She wasn't controlling. She wasn't ahead. She was behind, and she knew it. Adrian didn't speak, because he didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been said. Marcus was the first to move, not toward Adrian, but away, a step back, then another, because unlike Lena, he understood something important. This was over. Not the plan, not the situation, but the illusion of control. You should go, Marcus said quietly. Not to Adrian, to Lena. She turned toward him slowly, confused. Go, she repeated. Marcus didn't look at her this time, because now there was nothing left to coordinate, nothing left to fix. It's done, he said, and with that, he walked away, just like that. No hesitation, no regret, no attachment. Lena watched him leave, and something inside her shifted, because in that moment, she saw clearly, not Adrian, not the situation, but Marcus, for what he truly was. Someone who never stayed, someone who never hesitated, someone who would always choose himself. The realization hit late, too late, because now she stood alone, facing the one person she had betrayed, without anyone left to stand beside her. Slowly, she turned back to Adrian, and for the first time, there was no mask, no distance, no control, just truth. I didn't think it would end like this, she said quietly. Her voice trembled, not dramatically, but enough. Adrian looked at her, not cold, not emotional, just clear. How did you think it would end? He asked. The question was simple, but it carried weight, because it forced her to face it, to imagine the version of reality she had accepted, the version where he didn't survive, where he didn't know, where he disappeared quietly, and she moved on. Lena looked down, because she couldn't answer, not honestly, not out loud, and that silence said everything. Adrian nodded slowly, because now there was nothing left to question, nothing left to understand, only something left to leave behind. I was going to die here, he said quietly. Lena's head snapped up, because hearing it again felt different, real, final. But I didn't, Adrian continued. And that changes everything. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was certain, and certainty ends things. Lena took a small step forward. Adrian, wait. The words came out softer this time, almost fragile, but he didn't move, because now he didn't follow her anymore. I was wrong, she said quickly, too quickly, as if the words alone could fix something, undo something, erase something, but they couldn't. Not this, not now. I didn't think. She stopped, because that was the problem. She hadn't. Adrian watched her, and for a brief moment, there was something there, not love, not pain, but recognition of what she had become and what she had chosen. You didn't think I mattered, he said. Quiet, direct, true. Lena's eyes filled slightly, because that was the truth she couldn't escape. I do now, she whispered, and that was the most painful part, because realization came too late. Adrian shook his head slightly. Now, it doesn't matter. The words were final, because timing is everything, and hers had passed. Lena stepped closer again, this time, not controlled, not calculated, but desperate. Please, she said, a word she had never used before. Not with him, not like this. But it didn't change anything, because desperation is not the same as love. Adrian stepped back, just one step, but it was enough. Enough to create distance. Enough to end everything. You made your choice, he said calmly, and now I'm making mine. Lena froze, because this time, she understood. There was no coming back from this. No second chance. No way to fix it, because some things, once broken, don't return. They end. Completely. Adrian turned, slowly, without hesitation, and began to walk away, not rushing, not looking back, because he already knew there was nothing left behind him worth returning to. Adrian. Her voice broke this time, real, desperate, too late, but he didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't respond, because now he understood something completely. The man who died in that car would have stayed, would have hesitated, would have forgiven, but that man no longer existed. This version was different. stronger, clearer, free. And as he walked away, the distance between them grew, not just physically, but completely. Because some endings aren't tragic, they're necessary. And for Adrian, this wasn't a loss. It was a release. Because this time, he didn't burn, he didn't break, he didn't stay. He walked away. And that made all the difference.